Hi, I'm Erin, and I write fantasy fiction and poetry.
And I'm K.R. House, and I write fantasy and science fiction.
And today we are going to be talking about Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. More so in the context of, if you haven't read a book by Brandon Sanderson, there are a lot of them. And, and there are some in different series, some that aren't in series. Where do you start? And we think that Tress is probably one of the most optimal books to start with, for a few different reasons that are kind of related to just, depending on what your kind of reading stamina is, and also how it fits into Brandon Sanderson's whole body of work. So what is Tress?
What is Tress? Tress is actually Glorf, right? Or Glorf something. That's her name. How the book starts, she's like, my name is Glorfindel or Glor, something disgusting.
And she's like,
but everyone calls me Tress. So I think that kind of gives you an insight into the tone of the book.
Yes.
It's like a fun, it's like very action adventure, very fun book about a girl who lives on an island in this magical sea.
Yes.
Sea of spores.
And she is from a working class family, but she makes friends with this boy who's in the, of course, who's in the kind of more nobility. And so they get to know each other because she's working for them. That's right. That's kind
something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But what happens to the main conflict?
He ends up getting taken away. He is against his will. He is taken off somewhere, and she's gonna go save him and bring him back. Yes. That is her motivation. She's like, my poor Charlie. He wanted to be with me. I wanted to be with him. Now he's over there. I'm going to rescue him.
That's right.
So, which is I think it's fun to have. It's fun that it starts with her going to rescue her boyfriend.
That's right. And one of the main things about the book, so Tress of the Emerald Sea. So the way that the world is that their sea is actually, this isn't a spoiler.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Their sea is a bunch of spores. And there are different seas in this world, and they have different colored spores. And if the spores get wet, something happens. And usually it is pretty harmful to people if you were in close proximity to a spore and it does whatever that particular spore does. So that is kind of what kind of keeps the people, one kind of feature, I guess, of Tress in her life is they don't really leave where they're from because it's not very safe to go places. So the fact that he has not only been taken away from her, but also in this kind of treacherous environment, and that becomes something that she gets to kind of see how she feels about. I'll leave it at that.
She goes on her mission.
Yes. And so it's not only is she navigating that situation, but it also gives you this really, really cool and very clearly defined magic system.
Yes.
To read about her doing all these things in the context of having to be wary of and interact with that, and kind of how that works.
Yeah, it's a very Brandon Sanderson feeling magic system, which I think kind of goes well into our points on why we think Tress is a good first Brandon Sanderson read.
Yes, you get a lot of good classic Brandon Sandersonisms.
Yes. Yeah. Our first reason why we think Tress is one of the best Brandon Sanderson books you can read first is that it is half the length of a lot of other ones. It's literally it has, we looked it up before this, it was 110,000 words, which is 380 400-ish pages, whereas a Stormlight Archive book is 1,000 pages, and Mistborn is maybe 600 or 700. I don't even they're quite long, and it's a standalone. So you don't need to read anything beforehand. You can just read Tress.
Yeah, this is actually the only Brandon Sanderson book I have completely read is Tress, because kind of some of the same reasons. When I look at how many pages a book has, if that number starts with 5, I get nervous. I'm oh wow, I'm going to be here for a while, and that's just because of my own reading habits and things like that. But that did make it a lot more approachable, because it's like Brandon Sanderson is one of those authors that you hear a lot about. And you're like, okay, I want to find out what everybody's talking about. But then people like me see it and they're like, whoa, okay, do I? How much do I really want to find out? And so like reading a book that's kind of that, like, there's a much easier place to kind of like dip your toe in and get a sense of things before you commit to 1,000 pages Stormlight Archive.
Yeah, it is. Stormlight is certainly a commitment. Yeah. It's like an approachable read. It's just such a long read. Yeah.
Our second reason for kind of putting this forth as a good place to start is that Brandon Sanderson has done this really cool thing where he has united pretty much all of his books into this entity, I guess, called the Cosmere. So I guess as you start to read them, you start to pick up on the fact that there are things connected. I'm not sure if it's that obvious or if it's just something that he has kind of said is true. But I know if you have read other things that he's written, there are some things in Tress that you can kind of see the connections between. But also, someone like me who's never read any of those, it also just is great as its own standalone book. And then once you kind of get to the end of it and you kind of see how it fits in the universe that the story takes place in, and also just with awareness that there are other stories out there, like, it gives you this really great sense at the end of the book that it's like, there's more to this, but I don't need to know that for this story to be satisfactory. But also I can see how there is just a greater mystery here. There are things that are bigger than these characters in this like slice that I've been given.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think you can also say the same thing about Elantris, which is like his first published book, and is another really great standalone. And Elantris is also really good. Like, I think depending on whether you're looking for something, if you don't like lighthearted or funny stuff, I would recommend Elantris over Tress. But I think Tress could be for some people or for a lot of people, a better entry point, because it is more lighthearted and it is more like, okay, it has more of those hints of the Cosmere than Elantris does. I think Elantris does kind of in hindsight. And the other thing about Tress is it has Hoyd is a major character. He's the narrator of Tress, and he's in like basically all of the Cosmere books. I don't know if he's in all of them or if it's just the majority of them. And it's fun to read the other books first and then read Tress, because you're like, oh, this is that guy who was like peppered in. But I think it could also be really fun to read Tress first, and then when Hoyd shows up in other stuff, you're like, wait, this is that guy? Because in some other stuff, when he shows up in like the other books, sometimes he is this more mysterious figure, and like he's still kind of a jokey guy, but like he seems more like mysterious and wise a little bit. And in Tress, he's like having a terrible time and is just a ridiculous person. So I think that can be a fun way to be introduced to that character too. Yeah,
because again, I haven't read other things, but in talking to people and like conversation when they're like, oh, what do you think about this character? Like being aware that the state he's in Tress is not the same.
Yeah, he's like,
which also, because he's presented as the narrator, the way he is in Tress, you're like, okay, something has happened here.
Yeah, okay, I think he's like cursed, basically.
Yeah, something like that.
But it's just really funny.
Yeah,
the way it works.
To kind of like see the connection.
The other thing, like I said, Tress is a little more lighthearted than Elantris. I also think it feels more like modern day Sanderson, or like more mainstream Sanderson. Elantris is his first one, and I think Elantris can be a good starting point too. But Tress feels more like current era Sanderson than Elantris does. So I think like that can be part of why it can be a good taste of this author, to be like, okay, if I like this, maybe I'll like some other things too. And like we said, Tress is his most lighthearted book, but just the writing style of it and also the characters feel more like modern day Sanderson. I think one thing that he does really well for like a male epic fantasy author is he writes really good female characters. And I think his female characters in Tress, like Tress herself, is a great example of that. Yeah. And I think his character work in Tress feels more like his character work in his later books than Elantris.
I can't really add a ton to that because I haven't read his other books. But I have listened to a lot of his lectures and like podcasts and stuff like that. And kind of hearing him talk about like his process and his kind of like story with when he wrote Elantris and like when he wrote Tress. Like he wrote Elantris like at the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
And Tress is more recent, so that kind of makes sense. But also I think that it does kind of like, again, I can't compare it to his other books, but I see how the way he talks about stories and like is in those other things. Like I read Tress and I'm like, oh, I absolutely believe that guy wrote this.
Oh,
I guess.
yes,
like
very much
like it seems like it's like true to how he presents other things, which, like I said, is not super useful as far as being a representation of his style in writing. But from an outside point of view, I think there's some good cohesion there, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Another thing, kind of on that same note, is the when I read Tress, I thought it was great. Phenomenal. There was one thing about it that I didn't like love. It definitely didn't ruin the book for me. But I did feel like there was this shift near the end where it's like we've had this kind of steady pace and then everything just kind of speeds up. And I was kind of like, okay, if I had to have any critical remark about this book, that's probably what it would be. Like I said, phenomenal overall. And in talking to the friend who had most like gotten me to read the book, he kind of said, yeah, that's kind of how Brandon Sanderson books are. So it's like, not only is it like representative of his style, but also like it's also maybe representative of something you might not like in his books. So it's like Tress is kind of a good opportunity to kind of see how much you don't like that, I guess. Like if you really want to commit to the other things.
It has which is another reason maybe why I'm like Tress is maybe more in common with his current books than Elantris, because Tress is very much it follows like the Sanderson formula. People have a name. People call it the Sanderlanche.
What?
Which is like the avalanche, the Sanderlanche, which is as you get to the end of the book, everything happens all at once. Which from like we've talked about this before we started filming. Like for me, that's a major pro because I love the energy of things ramping up and like things are happening, excitement, the climax, the battles, all that stuff. It is very typical to his style and it is in most of his books. So if you're like, this feels like bad pace, like you don't like that type of pacing, then if you figure that out on a rather low investment book like Tress, you don't have to go read Stormlight Archive where you have to get to, where you're like, yeah, right. Because if you don't like it there, you're not saying you definitely won't like the books, but I don't know, maybe you can bump it down on your priority list. Like it might not be your thing.
Right. Yeah. I feel like it's also when you invest when you invest more time in something and then it has a feature like that, if that really bothers you, it tends to make the bothering more. That's true. Than with this, where it's like, if you're not, like you said, like you're not investing as much, just like, it's okay. Yeah. You may not be as outraged, I guess.
Depending on like I spent like 4 weekends in a row doing nothing but reading this book and I don't like the ending. Then,
you'd be more likely to try one of the long books after Tress than you might be to try Tress after one of those.
Yes, I think that is a good way to explain it. I agree.
Okay. All right, so we talk about Brandon Sanderson a lot on this channel. Obviously, we respect him, and we think you should read probably most of his books, if not all. But like I said, it's kind of intimidating. So these are just our thoughts on why Tress is a good place to start. If you've read other Sanderson books and you think there's a better place to start, tell us. We can have that debate in the comments. If you also haven't read any Sanderson books or you've only read a few, let us know how, those kind of fit into your kind of sense of Brandon Sanderson and his like general work. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.